Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Me and Tyler are here with Sarah Stogner. She's the Republican candidate for the Texas Railroad Commissioner. She's in a runoff right now in May 24th. Can you tell us how you got where you're in a runoff with one of the most expensive candidates in the industry?
I got naked on a pump jack.
There you go.
Yeah, no. So my name's Sarah Stogner. I'm an oil and gas lawyer, and I've lived in the Permian since 2017. And I moved on to a cattle ranch last summer. And about a week after living there, an old Chevron well came unplugged. And I have enough experience litigating well control issues. And I've been an oil and gas lawyer, actually helping people contract risk and then sue insurance companies after wells blow out. And I'd had a client spend literally millions of dollars. Ooh, the Red Bull opens. Millions of dollars weighting up calcium chloride water. And this was naturally flowing 10 pound and fresh water's 8 something pounds, right? So anyways, I knew it was really, really bad early on. And over time, it just got worse and worse, and they lawyered up against the landowner. So if you live in the state of Texas and you're a criminal, the state lawyer's up against you. Or if you're a landowner complaining about oil and gas on your property, the state lawyer's up against you. And so I decided to run for office. So here we are. And I'm not raising any money because part of the problem is that they're essentially a captive agency that big oil and gas is bought and paid for.
Yeah, basically just whoever you're running, they're paying your way. So when you're going to be regulating them, they're the ones that put you in office.
Right. It would be like if Wall Street elected the Securities and Exchange Commission and then called them the Banana Commission.
Makes sense. So we're mostly cotton production for this whole podcast is cotton agriculture, beginning farmer stuff, but beginning farmers and farmers in general can deal with y'all because of pipelines and groundwater issues and orphaned wells and stuff. I've Googled it. There's nowhere to find, like if you have an orphaned well and you have even no idea who put the well in because you just got the farm and you want to get it cleaned up. There's ways to fix that, but we just have no idea because no one's telling us.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, right? Is that landowners are being left out of the conversation. So if you go to the Texas Railroad Commission's website and you search for their GIS system, you can actually enter in GPS coordinates and it'll take you to their public database of wells. But it's not comprehensive and it's not all that accurate. And if you've got something that's truly orphaned and just a little pipe sticking out of the ground, God only knows what it is and who put it there and when it was drilled. But it could be very dangerous. And so, yeah, if you hit it with a four-wheeler or a tractor, people can die.
Right. I was stripping. I do a lot of custom stripping, which we harvest for people. And I almost ran my cotton stripper into one just in the middle of a field randomly. It's just there. And that could have been really, really expensive. And I asked the guys, and they're like, we don't know. And it's like I was talking to you before. I got the same well. It's within a mile of that other well, just out in the middle, and it's right next to Interstate 20. I mean, it's literally 20 feet from Interstate 20.
Yeah, send me when we're done, send me the GPS coordinates. I'm going to look it up and see if I can't. And look, I'm really easy to get in touch with. My website's sarah4rrc.com. And you can send me an email. And if you got questions about any of this, I'm happy to connect people and give them magic language. Because the big thing is that I learned that I didn't know until I actually had to complain as a landowner instead of just as an attorney, is that you have to call and file an official complaint. So don't be nice and say, hey, local railroad commission office, I have a request. Can you guys go just inspect this thing? It doesn't look right. Nope, not the magic words. You have to say, I am filing an official complaint, and then they're going to give you a complaint number. And then they'll go and they'll inspect it, and then they'll send you a letter, and they'll say either there's notice of violation or it's compliant and we're closing it out. And you have to make sure that you are persistent, because if you've got a really bad well, what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll say, here's a notice of complaint. The operator will go in, maybe suck the fluids out, throw some clean caliche on top of it. They know when they're coming back out to reinspect it because it tells them in the letter. And then they'll like go dump clean caliche, have the inspection. 2 days later, it's dripping and leaking again. And you file a complaint. You're like, hey, I'm following up. The same thing I complained about, they'll open a new complaint. And so that then you have to say, no, I'm not opening a new complaint. I want the same complaint. And then that's how you actually get progress. But I didn't know this until I moved out onto the ranch and had all these issues.
I got to see it firsthand.
Yeah. And then I was like, this is Is this a non-cussing podcast?
No, well,
Pretty much. We try to keep it clean here.
Okay, so I was like, this is really screwy.
Yeah.
We need to fix this. And then I went to the public hearings because you can go in front of the commission and anybody can have 2 minutes to speak. And so I was like, maybe they just don't know. And we gave them more information. And then I realized, nope, it's just this bad. They're bought and paid for. And I'm going to have to run. So here we are.
You know, you said magic a while ago. We were talking about it before you walked in. Your hashtag is unicorn. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Or we figured there's a catch behind it.
Yeah. So have you guys seen that old YouTube? It's the guy that he does the Hot Crazy Matrix. And so a few years ago, I was talking to my husband at the time and I was like, what's it like to be married to a unicorn, which is like not very crazy and relatively good looking. And he was like, I don't know. I'll let you know with my third wife. And I was like, haha. But no, it's like my entire life, I'd see things that were wrong and I'd ask questions and I'd have proposed solutions and people would be like, no, that's crazy or that's impossible. And I was, no, it's not crazy or impossible. You guys are just too mediocre to figure it out. And so that's kind of where it's a Derek on the unicorn. So I've got some stickers for y'all. Don't let me forget.
Awesome. We've been putting stuff up everywhere that everybody's been here. So
It's cool.
yeah. So if you have an orphaned well and there's saltwater damage and stuff like that, that can cost you money being a farmer. And you got to farm around it, stuff like that. But irrigation and groundwater issues, that's one of the bigger issues with all these orphaned wells, right? They could be leaking way down low and getting into the aquifer.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you don't know. So if you've got wells on your property, I recommend doing a comprehensive water analysis, not just like your traditional ag with your basic TDS and chlorides, like a $1,500, go and get all the radiation, all the benzenes, the xylenes, the toluenes, the VTEX, radium, right? Like barium, because we had radiation in our groundwater. And it comes from produced water. It's naturally occurring.
Just natural.
But it's naturally occurring really deep. It's not naturally occurring at what aquifer are you guys mostly using out here?
I forgot what we are. It's a replenishing. It's not the Ogallala. It's comes off and it kind of sits in here, but there's like 5 different layers.
I imagine that's close to the Colorado that you've got some unique, right, hydrology. But where we are, it's the Pecos Valley alluvium. It's sands, and then it's Pecos Valley alluvium from like 50 to 100 feet, and then Santa Rosa, which is part of the Ogallala, from like 150 to 250, and then Rustler, 600 to 700. And the Rustler's always been on the list of major secondary aquifers that we thought, okay, long term, when we really want to run out of water, we can, with minimum filtration, it's like at 1,200, 1,800 parts per million, you can filter it and have it be potable. Not anymore. Where we're seeing it out by us, it's like at 180,000 parts per million TDS with chlorides and sulfates. And if you start getting really high chloride to sulfate ratios, then you know it's probably related to oil and gas. So you'll have naturally high chlorides sometimes in certain aquifers, but if you get like more than 1.5 to 1 chlorides to sulfates, it's probably produced water.
See, I'd be curious, like right out here west towards Westbrook, Kahoma, and that major flat, there's water, but all these houses have to have either piped in water from city or because anything they drill is, I mean, it's so salty they can't do anything with it. So they've always said, oh, it's just always been salty, but how long have we been doing?
Yeah, how did people settle that in the 1800s and late 1800s? They weren't drinking salty water then.
I mean, it's so salty you can't irrigate with it either. Like it's just pretty much turn everything barren up top.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys near here are where really early on, right? And they had like 1 million barrel ponds and right.
Yeah.
So historical, if you've got any sort of, you can have top-down contamination if you'd had an old pit, like an overflow pit, or like where the gun barrel runoffs go, and then old saltwater pits, drill pits, or you can have bottom down, and where that's happening is if you've got old well bores that don't have mechanical integrity, and since we've been injecting more shallower,
they're just leaching down.
It finds path of least resistance, and so it goes
where they don't even think it's going.
Yeah, that you were talking about radiation. Like we could be messing with a pivot in irrigation water that's radioactive. I mean, probably not too radioactive, but that's probably not good for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the landowner on the ranch where I live, her mom died of a really rare form of cancer of the adrenal glands that sit on the kidneys. And it's like a 1 in 2 million shot. And we found benzene, toluene, and radium-226 and 228 in her groundwater. And did that cause her mom's cancer? Maybe, maybe not. But
Yeah, it's kind of a 1 in 2 million, and you live right in the middle of what you
drinking
just found.
Contaminated water.
What was the lawyer's assistant movie that they were
The
out
Aaron
there?
Brockovich.
Yeah.
It feels like that a lot of ways. Except I don't want, I want to make sure we don't get plaintiffs' lawyers involved. And I don't want us to be the next Louisiana. We can learn from other mistakes, but it takes, just like I have a 7-year-old, and it's the basic kindergarten rules of like, when you make a mess, clean it up. When you make a mistake, admit it, learn from it, move on. And I just feel like so many people in so many different levels of our lives aren't willing or able to do either of those. And until we get some intellectual honesty, we're going to continue to have really big issues, and money talks.
Yes.
So you were saying that if I'm a farmer and I've got an orphan well or I've got a pad site that needs to be cleaned up, and what happens if this company doesn't exist anymore? They've been out of business for 20 years, 30 years.
So it'll go on the state's orphaned well list. The federal government last year is giving us more money, but half of the Railroad Commission's budget goes to plugging orphaned wells, which is crazy because that's their job, is to make sure that people don't leave orphaned wells. And they suck so bad at that job that then half of their money goes to fixing what they couldn't do the first time, which is asinine, right? But yeah, so it gets on the orphan wells list, and then they prioritize it based on how bad it is. So if it's not actively leaking, it'll probably sit there for 20 years. Or if you want, you can go in and you can pay to plug it, which is a huge risk because you never know what's underneath there. And then you can submit for reimbursement and get like 50% back from the state's orphan fund. It's like a lose-lose situation.
Well, can get expensive really quick because you drill down there.
Are they trying to open up any of these orphan wells with the new fracking technology, or once it's capped and everything, nobody's allowed to touch it again?
You can re-enter them, but these are old wells that don't have mechanical integrity. Old steel, old cement. You don't want to be using them for modern wells.
Okay, so groundwater issues and orphan wells, but also us farmers, we deal with pipelines, and some of them were put in the 30s and they're super shallow. I mean, we had a farm I raised hell with, I'm not gonna say the company, but basically I knew it was like 6 to 8 inches deep, and it's a big high pressure line. And finally, after 4 years of griping, we couldn't even farm the area because we're afraid someone's gonna die. They were sitting there, and they finally got them, dug it up, buried it deeper, and I could see scratch marks across the top of that pipeline. And then they buried it, and there's 7 more lines running over here, right here. And I told the guys, oh, they're marked. I was like, okay, so get in the tractor with me real quick. They wouldn't get in the tractor with me because they're not for sure how deep those lines are either. And that's something we deal with all the time. And is that something you would be dealing with?
So if they are intrastate pipelines, they have to be buried to at least 36 inches unless there's a private contract that sets it deeper at a different depth. You can also, unfortunately, like waive the right if they're supposed to be buried under the contract and no one's ever made them made them be below plow depth. You can run into some issues. And so, yes, technically, I think that if it's an intrastate pipeline and it's not just internal flow lines within the lease, then those are just private property. And I was reading about it again today to make sure before I came on. I haven't had that specific issue, but I'm like, is this really the case where you can put like a little 4-inch flow line on your lease and not have to tell anyone, basically? Not even the Railroad Commission?
That's what I was told, because where we were putting in a new set of irrigation, 811 called and they said there's no pipelines going across there. I'm like,
yeah, that's public utilities.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, there is. I mean, I guess it would have to be the oil field company would have to come out, but they're like, anything under 4 inches, they're not going to come mark. And I mean, it was fresh. I knew exactly where it was, but it's like, if you pick up a place that's got 4-inch lines zigzagging all across it, nobody.
Yeah, and they do, because they abandon them in place. They don't dig them back up. they probably have remnants of hydrocarbons in them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hit them or you've got a spark or an ignition source,
I've heard stories of people running polyline flow lines through ranches when the grass fire kicks up. They're running oil through on top of the ground in a polyline and catching on fire, and these guys are out here fighting a wildfire, and the next thing they know, they're fighting an oil fire in the middle of a pasture, and they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's terrifying and not surprising.
Yeah.
But not illegal or not supposed to do? Neutral ground.
Yeah, I think it's gray. I mean, I think it's legally gray, and you'd have recourse,
It's on private property, so if they're doing it, they're right. But like you said, it's gray. Yeah.
It's like 811. I put in a ticket, the irrigation company put in a ticket, and the electrical company put in a ticket. And the electrical company started digging, and they hit 30-something, 6,000 volts, something like that. And I was digging right beside that. So, and they hit fiber. I come out there. The wind turbine company that we hit was like, y'all should have called 811. I was like, well, there's 3 tickets on this place. And they're like, well, they're here. Even if
even if you call 811, if
Yeah.
you hit it, you're still liable.
Liable.
It
Yeah.
doesn't give you any. It
Yeah.
doesn't give you any protection.
No.
And it's like, how was I supposed to know y'all's line was here if y'all didn't tell us? And like, y'all couldn't come out here. And I was like, the guy pulled the tickets up and he said that all 3 tickets were open and should have known. Like, we get too many tickets a day. I'm like, well, I don't want to die. So
Yeah.
811's got a problem.
Yeah,
And-
we have to do better.
but that's not
sure.
that's not something you have to deal with. So.
No.
But we can yell about it still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in the runoff in May.
Yes. So I need everyone in Texas to vote on May 24th. If you voted, as long as you haven't voted in the Democratic primary, if you didn't vote in the March 1st primary, you can vote. We have an open primary system in Texas. So anyone can vote in any primary. So May 24th. Early voting's May 16th through the 20th. And people can go to the Secretary of State's website, make sure that they're registered. I think they have 3 or 4 more days to register for that next round.
I think we're gonna post this tomorrow. We've got a few coming, but since it's May.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
we're gonna push it a little bit.
Is your campaign trail a little more fast and furious now that you're in a runoff?
It's about the same pace. I mean, I've basically got at least one event every day, and just trying to go to Republican meetings, podcasts, right? Any way I can get my message out, because
Right.
I'm not accepting money, so I'm not sending postcards. I'm not sending text messages. I bought 40 yard signs that I gave away already, but people can go like buy a yard sign on my website. It just drop ships from the manufacturer, so I don't have to deal with the money.
Gotcha. Living in more of today's society of social media and just our generation's way of communicating.
Has a text message ever swayed a vote in the history of
Apparently.
sending text messages?
It pisses me off more than it does
That's what I
helps.
think.
I'm like, why do you have my number?
Yeah, if I get a text message from somebody and it's like just junk mail, I'm like, quit wasting my time. I don't want to deal with that.
Right? I know. That's
So-
what I think.
I'd rather open my phone and get on TikTok and see you yelling at people over orphan wells injecting salt in the air. That one video
Where everyone
you have,
was like, it's ice.
Yeah, that's not.
It's not
oh,
ice.
there's a saltwater well, if y'all don't know, on her TikTok. I think it's even on some other videos too. It is just pumping salt water.
It's from like January 3rd, if they go back and scroll. It's the
100
unicorn lawyer.
Yeah, 100 feet in the air, just salt getting thrown in the air.
150, yeah. It's
Is
fully,
that fixed yet?
fully saturated. Is it fixed? No.
oh,
It's still just pumping salt in the water.
They've
Oh.
capped it, so it's not spraying up
they're just
anymore.
catching it.
They're just catching it.
And I'm sure that's really clean salt water.
It's
And-
going back downhole somewhere.
It's not. Yeah, talk about radiation. Yeah, I mean, they're still injecting all around there. They haven't shut in operations. They don't know where the flow is coming from. It shouldn't be anything at 1,400 feet, and yet it's flowing 5 barrels a minute.
Mm.
That's 200 gallons a minute.
Is the landowner just like hands tied, basically?
Yeah, that landowner is kind of an absent landowner, and 3rd or 4th generation, lives out of town.
Coming more popular today.
Yeah,
less,
and I
less involved landowners.
Yeah, and I suspect what usually happens, unfortunately, is the oil gas companies will come in and just buy them out at a multiple value of the ranch. I mean, that's what they tried to do for us.
And then just hide the issue.
Yeah.
Well, we deal with that a lot. Because we do with a lot of beginning farmer stuff, and a lot of these are absentee landowners, and they don't know what's going on. The FSA is Farm Service Agency. They send us paperwork. We got to send them, and then they call us, and they're like, "What do I need to sign all this for?" And like, if you make over $900,000 a year, you can't get money from the government through Farm Service Agency, and people get aggravated. So it's like we deal with the exact same thing: absentee landlords and landowners that just don't know what's going on and don't really care. I own some land in West Texas, and I get a check in the mail every month. So same thing. We could be out here doing whatever we want, and they would have no clue.
Yep.
But we actually have to make money off the land, not just pull minerals out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're seeing a lot now is the oil and gas companies own it, and then there's like some private guy ranching it or farming it, but the title is actually owned by the oil and gas company.
Yeah. With my helicopter hog hunting stuff, I deal with that all the time, and like ranchers are like, "Oh yeah, this guy lives in Alaska or Hawaii or something," and you're like, "It's a 15,000 acre ranch," and you're like, "How do I get a hold of this person?" Well, I send them an email once a year. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Send them a check once a year and an email, tell them sort of what's going on. I'm like, They've never been here in 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So y'all deal with eminent domain a little bit also, correct?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the Railroad Commission doesn't have any jurisdiction to make a determination of whether the exercise of eminent domain is proper. But if you've got a common carrier, which can be, an oil and gas pipeline, anything it's for commerce, right? So if you've got a midstream company that's accepting water or whatever, they can come in and they just have to file a piece of paper with the Railroad Commission that says, here's our T4, we are claiming this. And the Railroad Commission just puts it in the file and notes it, but doesn't make any determination. Does that make sense? And then if a landowner gets a notice, they have to get like a bona fide offer, and then they can go through some specific eminent domain proceedings where the judge actually appoints 3 local landowners. It's kind of a unique legal proceeding. So, but unfortunately, there's no attorney's fees that are recoverable, and we're one of 10 states, I think, that still doesn't allow, like, say you're a landowner, a pipeline wants to come through, you say, I don't want to, I think your offer's too low, and then you have to go hire a lawyer, hire a surveyor, hire professionals. You don't get those fees back. It's kind of crappy.
I've dealt with that too. Like, we've got a farm over in goes south of here or north of here, and they come across and they tell you this is our maximum amount we allow. And I'll talk to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, "Well, really, you don't really have a choice. I mean, there's like 27 pipelines on that property, anyways, but the checks are nice. But
yeah, you can negotiate the terms basically, and so you got to be smart in negotiating your rod price and your how big during your construction and restoration provisions, and there's some.
Like you said, it'll get the card will be dealt if it's like right here south of town. There's a major pipeline right away. They're not going to reroute around a property just because the landowner doesn't want to when they can. I mean, there's already 7 lines in it. They're going to get their way.
Mm-hmm.
Come the end of the day.
I know there's an 8-inch flow line that I hit with a blade, and oil started coming out of the ground. And I called 811. They're like, "Oh, that line's dead." I'm like, "Well, there's oil coming out of it, so I don't know how it's dead." "Well, that's probably just pressure. It'll stop." Really? Okay. So we can go out there and with a rod. I can show you. It's like 10 inches deep right now. It's wild.
We were talking earlier too about farmers selling water to the oil field. I mean, that's definitely not in your realm of regulatory, but say you start noticing your water you're selling to them becoming salty, or I don't really know how we were wanting to approach it, but it's become a big commodity here.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it goes into your ground, like everybody want to take care of your groundwater. Is that going to become an issue if people keep selling it at an excessive rate?
Like we're salting up everywhere because when you deplete that fresh water, right, it increases your TDS. Unfortunately, you've got people that are in a lot of long-term contracts, and you got to be really careful about what you sell and when and why. And but yeah, groundwater is yours, and you can sell it.
Can Railroad Commission show up if we're like they leave us alone because we're agriculture? They can't
water
touch
wells.
us.
They don't have any jurisdiction over water
ag
wells.
rules in Texas. That's kind of the way it is. But when you start selling water to the oil field, you're in a different group, right?
It's still considered a fresh water well. And the Railroad Commission doesn't have jurisdiction, but a
Okay.
lot of times they'll place that fresh water right next to an SWD. And if that's the case, then the Railroad Commission has jurisdiction over that saltwater disposal well. So, but no, for fresh water, the Railroad Commission doesn't have jurisdiction.
I need to here when we get off the podcast. I'm gonna go show you some stuff. That,
Okay.
Like big 30-acre ponds, water wells surrounding it. It's like I
Yeah.
don't know. There's regulations to this, and there's just nobody watching over it.
Well, it depends on if you're in a groundwater advisory district.
There's a lot of water districts right through here.
Right.
But if no one's like, I mean, I know there's rules, but who's out there going to check the rules?
Yeah, no, like the enforcement's pretty,
Pretty lax.
yeah, it's kind of, I say that the industry is about as afraid of the Railroad Commission as you and I are of the meter maid. It's a slight inconvenience.
Yeah. Like we can't get oil from our barn. Like we have big totes of oil. We drain all the oil out of tractors. And like, I don't know who to call. Like they just stay in totes sitting at the barn.
Yeah, you have to go and pay to have it disposed of.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's becoming fewer and fewer companies that want to deal with
Used oil.
our amount. Look, we're a minute fraction compared to some of the stuff. So when you tell me I have 300 gallons, it's just like we're not going to come
There's got to
mess
be
with you.
there's got to be a business where it's like, yeah, I'll come pick a tote 300. I mean, that's what 5 barrels, and that's $500 for the oil. You go take it to the refinery, but I don't know how to do all that. So there's got to be somebody wanting to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think most people just like dump it and
Yeah.
Have you seen the picture from like the 1950s where like it was
It's like-
from the government
it's like
showing
here,
you?
I think I actually have that on one of my TikToks. It's like how to like kitty litter. And
Is properly dig a hole 10 feet deep,
yeah.
12 inches around, and then pour your oil down it. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not, if I got caught doing that today, we're
yeah,
straight to jail.
yeah, not good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we just touched about everything that we were wanting to touch. Is there anything you need to get off your chest?
Go
no.
vote.
Yeah, just we really need people to go vote. Seriously, every vote counts. I came in second over the third place guy by 10,000 votes March 1st, and we're expecting even less people to show up May 24th. It takes no time. Most places it's in and out, especially if you go early vote. Now you can vote at any of the early voting locations in your county. You don't have to go to your specific precinct.
Yeah. It's wild because I don't even know who the commissioner is right now.
Yeah, there's 3.
Oh, okay.
So they serve 6 years. I'm against the incumbent. His name's Wayne Christian. He has no oil and gas experience. He's a career politician. He was a state rep. He got redistricted.
He just kind of got redistricted into
lost.
that position.
Yeah. And then he's like friends with the Craddock establishment, which basically runs oil and gas in the state of Texas. Christy's one of the commissioners. She's the daughter. Tom's the rep out of Midland and Crane County. He actually owns some of the interests in the wells that are blowing out subsurface on the ranch where I live, and he's refused to speak with us. So like he has a financial interest in these wells and has ignored us from an elected official perspective and from an owner of the well perspective. It's insane.
So I'm guessing you're not getting any production checks from anybody.
No.
Okay. So that makes it a little better than somebody who's actually in the office who's getting production checks. So you can see how you might not want to look. You might want to look the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, right. And for years, the oil and gas industry and the ranching farming community were symbiotic. Like they'd look out for each other. Guys run cattle. They're pumpers during the week. It's a rural way of life, and we kind of all got along. Most cattle pens in West Texas are built with old oil field pipe. Now, though, they don't. If the pipe's worth anything, they take it. The only time they leave it is if it's rusted out, is contaminated with norm, and it's going to cost them money to get rid of it. So it used to be like, hey, we don't realize that this stuff's toxic. Take it. We're not using it. Whatever. Go build your pens. And now they're like, no, it's worth money. We're taking it. So now when they leave it, it's probably because it's a health hazard. And it's just
Is that what we're smelling when we're building?
Yeah,
pipe fences?
those plastic lined pipes you're cutting with a torch in front of you are probably not that safe to be cutting all that liner in there with. And it's like, ugh. I've got some buddies that farm out in Garden City, and they're mostly drip farmers, not irrigation. And they'll just come through there on a road and cut the entire field and then give them pennies on the dollar to pay for it because they're not the landowners. And they sit there and they're putting guys out of business out there because they just keep cutting all the irrigation tape. And you can't even farm it for the whole year, much less when a pipeline goes through.
right.
You're not going to have any production for 3 years. And I've sat there and argued with them when they put a pipeline in. It's like, hey, I need 3 years of production. They're like, we're going to give you like a penny and deal with it. Or
Right. And then you'd have to find a lawyer to fight it, and it's not worth it. And
You just
at least ask them to double ditch it so that the topsoil goes back. Like, they separate the topsoil.
we do make sure that happens because rocks and cotton farming do not mix at all. Those cotton strippers, those big green ones that you've seen before, they love to catch on fire, and rocks are what usually cause the problem.
Really?
So, you go across pipelines, and there's always like rebar and like wood left after they leave, and so my guys will go out there and clean it up, and then you'll always have a cave in somewhere. And
I just had a company come across and resettle all my dirt because it was about 3 foot deep.
Wow.
Where the pipeline resettled.
You'll be stripping cotton at 1 a.m, just cruising along, minding your own business, and just a gigantic cave in that's like 300 foot long, 36 inches wide, and just drive your whole machine into it. And you're just like, I think I'm going home. It's too late in the day. But,
well, thanks for having me on.
Thank y'all. Hope you have a great campaign and everything.
Thanks. I'll be back. I'll come back and we'll go hog hunting.
Oh.
Well, you missed it this weekend.
You missed it this weekend.
I know.
I haven't sent you the videos yet, have I?
No.
Oh, man.
Well, we had some people actually coming on. They came in from Louisiana. And they're like, we're going to call some pigs up. And I'm like, I've heard of this. I was like, this is bull crap.
And they did it.
They called in, 10 seconds. These sows stick their heads up and they just start running at us. And I'm like, okay, how close are we going to let these guys get? Because they're mad because they're baby squeal and they're getting aggressive. We don't get like 20, 30 feet from us where those guys started shooting. And I was like, well, that was a little weird. But so then, the babies were all by themselves too. So
but the babies are the only ones that are delicious.
Oh, you could have had all of them you wanted this weekend. The helicopter, I think we got like 140 something and 29 coyotes.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've seen on your TikTok. You know somebody who flies.
Yeah.
So
fun.
It's a good way to get good pictures of wells instead of using a drone.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun.
All right, guys. Well, I think we're gonna cut it off here and have a thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you.